A mentally ill teenager who had been groomed and preyed upon and sexually exploited online to the point of authorities getting involved. I spiraled into a hatred of myself and my body and was told that it was just because I was a boy born in the wrong body and that this would fix me. I was affirmed down a path where I wasn't given any other choice as to what would help me. The very first medical intervention I ever had was a double mastectomy at 16. And then a few months later, I was put on testosterone. I'm now 21, and I will live with the impacts of that so-called care for the rest of my life. In the past 4 or 5 months, I have watched as my body has fallen apart in front of me, my joints constantly hurting, my vocal cords aching, watching as parts of me atrophy away before my very eyes. And yet at 16, they looked me in the eyes and they told me this was care. They told me it would save me. Despite the fact I was never suicidal, my parents were baited with the idea of, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? Bullied into going along with it, their biggest crime being trusting those who they thought took an oath to do no harm. It's not about hate, detransitioning. It never has been. It's about keeping kids whole. I've worked with children. I've seen them explore the world, and I've seen that magic that they have. And doing something like transitioning them takes that away. How can you look me in the eyes and tell me that a child can consent to being changed to an experimental medical industry before they're even old enough to drive or understand the impacts of what that means in the first place? Kids deserve to be kids. They deserve to get to explore the world as a safe and loving place.
So in office, and he has a title of a doctor, so that of course makes it so much better, right? No, he's still a bloody dealer who ruins lives. Alright, so what happened is he ended up sending a recommendation letter, no questions asked, right? And it was just, hey, do you want it? I was like, yeah, I do. And well, the reason I said that, I was still living under my own sad illusions, and on top of that I was suffering from a horrible brain fog. I wasn't even capable of making a proper decision. But it happened, right? So, and there I was, he sent the letter, no questions asked, all happy about himself, right? Because he thinks he's helping, but what he actually did is, well, he sent me under a knife when I needed help. I believe it was the 4th of March at 9 a.m. Yeah, that's like a small detail you just never ever forget. And I remember the moments before surgeries. I very clearly remember having my doubts. I very clearly remember thinking, oh, God damn it, man, I just want to go home. You know, like I don't want to do this. But there was a part of me that was stubborn. Like if I don't go through this, if I come back, then well, I came here for nothing. And what about those people who told me that it's just a phase? If I don't get this surgery, well, I will prove them right. Well, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to get surgery either. But I was like, well, there's no turning back at this point, yeah. So I did lie on that table. I remember the anesthesiologist being there talking to me, asking me questions about like where I'm from and so on, and just drifting to sleep. Last thing I was thinking right before I drifted away is like, help me. You're like, I don't want to do this. Help me. You're like, I don't want to do this. I don't I don't think I said that out loud, but like in my head, that was the only thing I could think about at that point. And when I woke up, like probably some couple hours later, I was thinking like, oh, this was just a dream, man. Like all of my parts are still there. Well, very quickly came to this realization that no, welcome to your new reality. And that was one nasty, ugly reality, alright? Let's talk about the side effects of the surgery, because, oh, there were many. And I'm going to be very detailed, very graphic about it. Some of these are going to be quite gory details. But I want to show the dark truth about the surgery. I don't think there's a single person on this planet who should get this surgery, and I'm just being honest about it. First of all, I had a problem peeing for a long time, and there was another opening that developed. There had like an open wound that was in my urethra, and the urine was just leaking out of there. So I had urine just leaking out of several places, and for a long time I couldn't pee at all. I had to walk around with a catheter, and like getting it removed and put it back in several times to see if I would be able to urinate. It was just so painful. But oh, that wasn't even the worst pain of it all, because I think that somehow during the whole surgery my surgeon ended up damaging my behind. So every time I would go to the toilet to have a bowel movement, it would feel like shedding razor blades. I'm not exaggerating. It is kind of pain I wouldn't wish on any of my enemies. There was blood. Okay, every time I would go take a shit, there was blood all over the toilet. It lasted months. And the pain was so bad, I would try to hold it in as long as possible, just so I don't have to go. But, you know, then comes the time like, well, you can't hold it in anymore, it has to come out. And so every time when I was about to go to the toilet, like my hands were shaking, you know, like this. And I was like crying every single time. I was so in pain. On top of that, I had bleeding out of my new created wound as well, bleeding that lasted for like 4 years. I haven't experienced it since 2018. I think that was the last time, and I'm grateful for it. But like for 4 years, I had those bleedings like coming and going. Like I mentioned previously, I wasn't happy with my results, and you know, I realized like, that is not a bloody vagina. Well, bloody part, sure. The vagina part, well, not really, far from it. And you know, that's the moment where the realization just hits you, like, I am not a woman. I could never, ever, ever be a woman. So I bought into this lie, and now it all shatters. And when that happens, you know, there is no going back, because you realize that the life you've been living for the last 2 years was a lie. And I think that the reason why so many trans women will tell you that they are real women, is because they know they're not. And coming to that realization is super, super painful. It just hurts too much, so they choose to ignore it, but it's like under the surface, like lurking, wanting to come out. That's why, when they say, oh, you're not a real trans person because you regret it. No. The only difference between me and someone who hasn't detransitioned is that one thought. They're literally one thought away from being where I am. Someone would probably call me transphobic for saying that, but I don't really care. I will tell you what the reality of transitioning is like, and it is nasty and it is fake. You become something fake, something morbid and grotesque. And it first took me looking at my newly created past to realize just how morbid it is. At that point I was becoming, more content with the thought of being a guy. And all it took me to become a man is to cut off my balls. I think in my head I was convinced, I knew it was a wrong choice, but there was still part of me was like, well, I don't want my family to think I made a wrong choice, right? So I'm going to postpone it a little bit. That was basically what is happening. And on top of that, it's really not easy going back to your gender of origin, because we were so not used to it. It felt strange going back to living like that. I'm fully at peace right now. I accept who I am. I am a man. I cannot change that. It feels like I'm talking about someone else's story rather than my own. And perhaps it was necessary, because otherwise I don't think I could live with myself after everything that has happened, after everything that I have done. And I partially blame myself, because I should have known better. But I can't deny that the whole healthcare system had its dirty hands in this business, just allowing someone who's mentally ill, someone who needed help from past trauma, to transition is not something I can't let go of. And what happens is that the doctor that sent a recommendation letter to my surgeon lost his doctor license this year, which I think is a move in the right direction. If I put the story out there, I can make sure that he never ever gets a license back again.
The last 2 years of my life, and I realized it's been a complete hell. My life has just went down the hill ever since I had so-called bottom surgery trying to be a woman, and I regret it. I regret it 100%. I regret too that I ever thought I was trans, that I ever thought I could be a woman, and I wish I could go back and not have any surgeries or medical transition or take any hormones. To be honest, this transition has costed me so much of my health, both mental and physical, as well as certain relationships in my family. Right now, I have osteoporosis, scoliosis, I have a lump in my breast, I have 1-inch vagina, and so it's like I have no sex drive. I'm trying to do the transition. I'm taking testosterone injection at this point. I've been so delusional for all these years, and I just wish my family and friends weren't so supportive of my transition, and I wish they sat me down and talked to me and said, are you sure this is what you want to do? Maybe you'll grow out of this.
Okay, my name is Maddie, and I sound like a dude, but I'm not. See, so I transitioned for a few years, and I've been off hormones / detransitioning for a couple of years. Here's the deal. When I went to transition, I had to go to counseling to get a letter of referral to a doctor. The doctor wouldn't see me without that, but I only had to go to 2 sessions before this counselor was like, yeah, you have gender dysphoria. You need to be treated by a doctor. Let's get you this note. She wrote me the letter of recommendation. I took it to a doctor. doctor, and this doctor prescribed me testosterone on the first visit. Now, I'm not crying and blaming them for my decisions because I was a legal adult when I made these decisions. I knew that my voice would be permanently altered. I knew that I would permanently grow facial hair, which I still do. You can't really see it right now because I pluck my face. Literally, these tweezers are in my car all the time because on my brakes, I pluck my face. Anyways, I was a legal adult when I made these decisions, but now my issue with this is that they're allowing these things to happen to children. Children who can't drive. Children who are not old enough to buy alcohol because their brains aren't, like, they're not mature enough to do that. Kids who aren't mature enough to apparently buy nicotine according to the law. Like, they can't buy nicotine. They can't tattoo without parental consent because that's a permanent thing on your body. Why are we allowing this to happen to children? I would have been so much further along in my transition before, like, if I would have started that young. And I'm detransitioning, so that would not have worked out the way that I thought it would work out whenever I was that age.
So you're in this. This sounds really like hell. You're already a confused teenager. You now are hypersexualized, hyper filled with rage, and this goes on for how long before you decide, hey, maybe I'm not actually a boy?
So that went on for a few months, and I talk about in my piece about how I actually needed to be hospitalized twice due to this. And sometime after, and just as a side note, not once in either of my hospitalizations or any of my mental health treatment that I was receiving because of these extreme symptoms was the testosterone ever mentioned. That was never brought up. Like, I would write down, I'm a biological female, F, and I'm on 100 milligrams a week of testosterone. But none of these psychiatrists and none of these nurses and none of these doctors ever mentioned that testosterone as possibly a reason for my experience.
This person says, I am so bitter. The trans community says that if you detransition and regret what you did to yourself, you have no one to blame but you. But I was 10. I was 10 years old, I was obese, and I already looked more like a boy than a girl. I despised myself. The internet told me that this was a way out. They gave me tips on hiding from my parents who wanted nothing for me but not to make a huge mistake. I am 17 now, my breasts are completely stunted, I have a severe eating disorder, and I've never had a boyfriend. I ruined myself at 10 years old, and the community that once encouraged me now turns their back and ridicules me. I am so bitter.
This is a time for truth. This is a time for strength. This is a time to proclaim the gospel.
In middle school, I was heavy into the online LGBT community. I got the idea that I was trans for some reason, even though I didn't have any dysphoria. I came out as trans 2 weeks before my 13th birthday, and immediately my family got me a gender therapist and took me to see a doctor to get on hormone blockers. I just told them what I knew a trans person would say, even though I knew what I was saying wasn't how I actually felt. 6 months after I came out, I got an appointment with an endocrinologist who told me that I was too old for hormone blockers, but I could start testosterone. I wasn't sure if I wanted testosterone, but I went along with it because I felt like I was obligated to. At 15 years old, I got top surgery. I was never actually confident that I wanted it. I didn't even like binding, and I avoided it if I could. Looking back, I don't think I really had dysphoria regarding my chest, but I still had top surgery because I could, and I knew that it was the next reasonable step that a trans man would take. So I took it. I didn't feel pressured from my family. My main reasoning was that I didn't want to have to bind all the time. I was living as a man at school, and it was embarrassing for me to go to school as a boy and still have boobs, because what would other people think? So I got top surgery. Any bottom dysphoria I ever feel is most likely linked to being sexually assaulted as a young teen. Because it is not that I feel like I want a penis, it is that I feel like I just don't want private parts. I really haven't felt like myself since I was 13 or 14 years old. I keep trying to figure myself out and find myself, but I think I left myself behind all those years ago. I wish my parents had made me wait. I wish I had just waited. I wish I had spent the time to actually figure out what I was feeling and what I should have done about it. I miss my breasts and what little I had because I started testosterone so early that they never actually developed. I hate how my hair is thinned and how I'm now bald. The facial hair I have is nice for facial hair, but I hate having it. I hate what my body looks like now and what I've done to it. When I look in the mirror, I don't see myself. I haven't for a very long time. It's too late to go back now. My family would never understand it. They would never accept it. I know my partner would accept it and support me, but I feel like there is no point to even trying. My hair, my voice, my body, it has all changed for good, and any effort to be feminine just makes me feel like a creep. It is just a reminder that I'll never be the pretty woman I should be. It makes me feel so ugly and hurt. Even if I put in the effort to detransition, it wouldn't change the fact that I lost who I should have been, who I was meant to be. I lost my teen years and I lost myself. I'm just so lost. I have no idea who I am. I don't know what to do or where to go from here. Existing like this is so painful, but undoing anything will hurt other people. I'm scared of talking about this to people close to me. They wouldn't understand. I'm scared of the truth, but I need to get to know myself and I want to keep going.
Is that not the saddest thing you've ever heard? I was sick to my stomach when I was researching and doing this video and having to edit it and hear the clips twice and 3 times as I went through. I mean, I was crying my eyes out. I was praying to God. I couldn't even sleep. I was tossing and turning and crying, and God, save the children, please. Someone has to save the children. And oddly enough, I go online, and the very next day, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the presidential candidate, and, quote, anti-vaxxer, unquote, dropped this bombshell. He posted a link to these declassified CIA documents. Here's the link right here. I'm going to go through it right now. And as always, I will post all of the links to all the clips that I use in my video and the citations. They will all be down below in the description box, so you can go watch the full version of all those things where I pull the clips from. But these CIA documents about MK Ultra date all the way back to 1956. And here's what he said when he posted the link. New documents show that the CIA's MK Ultra program targeted indigenous and black children in medical torture experiments. Horrific. Well, we already knew that all of the MK Ultra experiments were horrific, and we've shown all the clips of the congressional hearings from the 1970s. This is a true thing, not a conspiracy theory. Many survivors have testified before Congress and the governments of the world. Other countries have made documentaries with some of these people, and that's not the worst of it. But what was important about these documents that made me go back and rework the entire first hour of this series, the first segment that we just did, was the new information about the school system. They didn't just do MK Ultra experiments on people in the mental hospitals and the people in the prisons and stuff like that without their knowledge. They did these experiments in schools, entire schools of children. And he doesn't use the term school in his microblog here, but that's what he's referring to. If you go and click the link and you read the article and the documents, he's talking about the schools, especially in Canada, that they were interested not just in individual MK Ultra mind control like they could get on mental patients and prisoners, but they wanted mass formation psychosis. They wanted to see which techniques would work on mass groups of people. And that's what, we've been talking about for years, that MK Ultra has gone live to the masses. Well, these CIA documents finally confirm that, going back to 1946 all the way through the 1970s. But I guess that's the problem, that they end in the 1970s. And we know from all the congressional hearings on MK Ultra, well, every time they get caught experimenting on us, the citizens, like the Tuskegee experiments, every single time they get caught, they're like, oh, well, we quit. We're not doing that anymore. Sorry. But everybody knows, and the whistleblowers from the CIA who have come out always say they never end a project. Anything that is useful is still going on today. In the 70s, they told Congress and the American people, okay, we stopped. We're not doing that anymore. And that's where these documents stop. That's where what has been declassified stops. And you'll see as we go through these documents that it didn't stop there. There are thousands, well over 1,000 missing pages because they're cited. There are citations of the other pages and names. And of course, there's tons of redactions and stuff. But yeah, the documents that have been declassified stop in the 1970s. But the program did not stop in the 1970s. I contend, like I just talked about in the first segment of this series, that I believe that is when it went live to the masses. That's when, instead of experimenting on students in residential schools that were isolated, that they had sufficiently infiltrated the American school system and the Department of Education and all of the government agencies that feed into that they had sufficiently infiltrated all of those agencies, that they took it live into the American education system. And then incrementally, here we are today. We have an entire generation that are young enough that they don't remember before. They originally chose schools where they could traumatize children and experiment on them behind their parents' backs. So they chose these indigenous schools because a lot of them were residential schools. So like boarding schools. So the children were always there. And the documents literally say that their teachers and administrators, the authority figures that they might go to for help, were pre-programmed themselves. So it's so multi-layered. But they also list the 3 techniques in these declassified CIA documents that they used on the school children for behavioral modification and mind control. And guess what they were? Number 1 was trauma. Number 2 was drugs. And number 3 was frequencies. Sound familiar? We've seen a steady flow of reports from that era to the present of these MK Ultra schools where children were subjected to SRA child abuse and MK Ultra techniques. And I'm not just talking about the preschools, but we can't forget that in this bigger picture. The McMartin preschools, the Presidio, the all across the military bases. Remember, we've done videos on that in the past. Please go back and check it out if you don't know that this has been going on in the schools, that this MK Ultra program has contracted schools specifically on military bases with the preschools. And the parents have come out with doctor's evidence and everything, and it's just a cover up. It just gets kind of swept under the rug. The McMartin preschool case and stuff, some of them make headlines, but really nothing ever happens. But in the regular, like elementary schools and stuff, they also contracted schools where the entire school was in on it, just like these CIA documents say was happening back in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. In modern times, we see like the Hampstead children. Remember the British Hampstead children, where they said that their father was in on it, enrolled them in this school, and that the headmaster was in on it, the teachers were in on it, and they would take them out of class in the middle of the day and take them to these remote locations where they were subjected to trauma-based mind control and, SRA tortures and things like that. And they said the police were in on it, different doctors in the area were in on it, and that's precisely what these CIA documents say was absolutely going on, that they say stopped. But these children say it didn't stop, and they were in a school that was doing this. Okay, so not just the Hampstead kids, British children, but here in the United States, David Carrico made a documentary about the Blue House called The Dark Covenant, Secret of Secrets. And it was about a school here in Indiana that was doing the same thing. Multiple students came out and said that when they were children, they were whisked away out of school and nobody protected them. The teachers didn't report it. Their principal was in on it. And David was actually involved in like an Inside Edition expose. I think it was Inside Edition, one of those shows like that, mainstream, back in the day. But of course, that's been scrubbed. But he was able to include old clips that he had copies of in this new documentary about the Blue House. David Carrico is from The Midnight Ride. He works with John Pounders over at Now You See TV. And that's where you can find this DVD and get a copy of it if you want. I think it's like $10. I got several copies of it for the store. Oh, you guys, I want so badly to finish that. I have $23,000 worth of inventory for the store that I handpicked. Stuff that is obscure like this, that people haven't seen. You're not going to get your hands on this. Even on Amazon, you can't get your hands on this. I've done it. I've worked so hard, but we don't have the building. Please, if you are at all interested in these safe havens, building these safe havens with us, please consider joining forces with us. I really want to get back to this work. I mean, I'm still doing the stuff behind the scenes, but it got so bad that I told God, I said, I'm going to have to sell the inventory, and I'm not sure I could replace it. The amount of hours that it took for me to search out all of these obscure copies of things, even, books from the late 1800s on eugenics and, that were printed, antique books, and, World War II books on the Nazi sex change operations and stuff that were from the 1920s and 30s, not reprints, actual copies, historic copies that have been scrubbed that are really hard to find now. I've worked so hard building this inventory, and I told God, I got in such a financial crisis. I'm like, God, I'm going to have to sell the inventory. I don't have a choice. This project we're not going to be able to complete the mission. There's no support. They've they've cranked down the economy so hard that we're all hurting so bad. I mean, which was their plan, right? They don't want an uprising. But anyway, I want so badly to finish this project and build this safe haven area here. And the reason I bring that up is because David Carrico and John Pounders, they're in Tell City in Indiana. I'm in Illinois, they're in Indiana. I mapped out the network of all the safe havens that I know about that Christians are building. I hope that we can do what the Lord has asked us to do. But they have the Puritan barn there. And how exciting is this? They have a pond and they baptize people. And Up North Angler, over on Twitter, he said that he went there just last month on Pentecost. It's in Tell City, Indiana, and he got baptized by David Carrico. That's what I want to do here. We need to be building this Christian network, this parallel society. By the way, congratulations, brother. That's so exciting. I want to go to Tell City. I want to go down to Texas to Josh's conference in September, too. I can't wait to connect ours with theirs. My niece is from Evansville, Indiana, and she married a guy from Tell City. So I've been to that area, and her in-laws still live there and stuff. So it's a bit of fate, if you will, that I'm already family connected to that area. And how's this for a synchronicity? She just sent me this article. She texted me this. This is June 27th. There in Indiana, like David Carrico was saying, here's another school that a teacher forced a student to eat his own vomit. And there were 5 or 6 people in on it, the administrators and teachers, that were just okay with that. They tried to cover it up. And still the teacher hasn't been put in jail or anything for the child abuse, but she surrendered her license. So here it is, Brownsburg, Indiana. One Indiana teacher has voluntarily surrendered her teaching license after being caught on video. Thank God for the video, because these other kids a lot of times aren't believed when they say, like the Hampstead kids and stuff, they say they're made to eat feces or drink urine. And people don't believe them. They're like, why would anybody do that? Just like that earlier clip of the amazing Desmond, that gay guy on the couch with him that used to make people drink urine. It's demonic. Why would anybody do that? But demons are demons, right? Okay, so this Indiana teacher was caught on video forcing a child to eat his own vomit. It allegedly happened at Brown Elementary School in Brownsburg. Police were first contacted in April about a report that a student had been mistreated during lunch. Surveillance video of the February incident was found through a search warrant. So, of course, they tried to cover it up first, but the police got a search warrant. Thank God the police weren't in on it this time. According to the documents, video shows an instructor handing a 7-year-old boy a spoon and ordering him to eat some of his own vomit off a tray. And he does. Like, that's how this child abuse happens. These are the authority figures. This is the trauma-based mind control that these children have been put through. And he does. The child eats his own vomit, and then the teacher tells him to clean it up, eat it all. 5 staff members have been charged with neglect of a dependent or failure to report. Again, the cover-up, failure to report. It wasn't just one teacher doing this behind closed doors in secret. They are openly torturing these children. The Department of Education has filed a complaint to revoke the license of the second teacher involved. So that's the end of the article. And here's another one from American Schools that we covered a few videos back. Remember the Massachusetts School for Mentally Disabled Children, where Harvard University and MIT researchers, and again with the military-industrial complex and Quaker Oats, worked together with this school to feed children radioactive oatmeal as an experiment. The article says the boys didn't find out the whole story about their contaminated cereal for 4 decades. So they were being poisoned at school and didn't even know it. And that's what's happening to our children now. In the late 1940s and 1950s, Robert Harris, a professor at MIT, led 3 different experiments involving 74 boys aged 10 to 17. As part of the study, the boys were fed oatmeal and milk laced with radioactive iron and calcium. Makes you wonder about all that almost free milk at Walmart, right? But there's a reason why they were testing the tolerance level of children for these radioactive materials. Now we see. with this COVID vax, synthetic biology, and nanobioelectronics, that they are building infrastructure inside of us and externally around us that is very radioactive. And not everybody is surviving it. People are dropping like flies. Disease is rampant. I mean, cancer is rampant. All of the heart tissue is being destroyed. Organs, all of our organs are being destroyed. And they're just like, oh, well, people have always had disease. Thank God Big Pharma has extended our life. It's like, well, the Bible says people used to live to be like 1,000 years old, 800 years old. And now we're barely making 70 or 80 years, you know. But again, the inversion. They're like, no, Big Pharma's not killing you with all of this technology. You would only live like 10 years. People only lived like 30 years before Big Pharma came and rescued you. No, that's not what the historical records say. They're killing us. But anyway, they weren't just being sadistic. They were testing on children the tolerance levels of this radiation that they implemented now. It's the same exact period. We've been through this for years and years with all the documents, that at the very same time they were rolling out all the propaganda and implementing the injection schedules that now that we are told are vaccines, but they were never vaccines. And we've shown that before. I'm not going to rehash it here.
I miss COVID.
I know. Dude, you know what I knew? There was trouble when anyone that came to our country didn't have to get a vaccine. And I go, if you're telling me I can't go to work, but everyone coming in doesn't have to get one, I go,
well, once we found out when Fauci said, okay, I'm sorry, but if you've had 2 boosters and 2 vaccines, you can get and give COVID to another guy who's had 5 vaccines and 4 boosters. What's the difference between a vaccine and a booster? I don't know. It's just more vaccine, but booster sounds better. Anyway, a guy with 25 vaccines would get and give COVID to another guy with 25 vaccines. That's why I'm introducing the daily COVID shot. Every day you get a shot. By the time you get to your car, you got no immunity. But it's a beautiful 39 seconds.
But also in this era, in the 1950s especially, the CIA was doing the LSD drug experiments with mind control and all of these other big pharma chemicals. And again, they used the schools, but they needed older students, and so they used the universities. And they contracted professors in all the major universities. And you can see this goes back MIT, that's 1940s and 50s. They've had these professors in place forever. And the big hippie movement, the LSD, oh, they're counterculture. No, they weren't. Every one of those guys were like straight out of the military academy. Timothy Leary was pulled like straight out of West Point. They did. They took these young students straight out of West Point. They pulled them first year, second year, and then they planted them in these universities. And then, like Timothy Leary, he was in charge of introducing these drug experiments to all of the other professors, the writers, you know, the intellectual class. And that's what he did. He went around, he was a drug dealer, and he got everybody involved in it. It was all CIA. And again, I would point you back to that Age of Deceit video, the trans agenda and breeding program. Over on Odyssey, though, it's broken down into 8 parts. So you can go directly to this one segment in that video series about the CIA and the military implementing this whole psychedelic era. And it's this video right here, Age of Deceit, Part 7, Secret Base in California. And this is only on Odyssey. It's not anywhere else. You won't find it on BitChute or Rumble or anywhere else. This is only on Odyssey because they had the foresight to set their platform up where they could clone or copy people's channels right before they got terminated. And the other, you know, on BitChute and Rumble, we have to rebuild all of that archive, and I just don't have the time. In fact, I did last week set up a second channel on BitChute and on Rumble, and every video on those channels will be the shorter version video. So there will be between like 8 minutes and around an hour, nothing over around an hour. Because on my main channels, a lot of people just don't have that attention span. So they'll see it and they'll be like, oh, that looks interesting. And then they're like 4.5 hours and they just move on. And, you know, you can't blame them. But then ironically, they will go over and binge watch shows all the time. They'll put on Stranger Things and watch 1-hour episodes for like 7 hours all night, which they could do, but that's not the way people work. So I wanted to do what I used to do and break all these down. But, you know, I need help. You guys, I need to be able to delegate some of this stuff. You know, you take these other channels that you say Zcast or whatever. He's got a team that helps him do all of that. Now You See TV, they have a team. Paranormal Roundtable, they have a team. I don't have anybody. This is a one-man show over here, or a one-woman show. And I'm a single mom and working 3 jobs and homeschooling. I'm out for the summer now, so I'm hoping to get these all broken down and all of that. But that's why I want to get to the next level. This thing that I'm trying to build with the Safe Haven, to have a group of people who can see the vision, who have caught the vision and know what I'm trying to do here and want to help, so that I can delegate some of this and they can work on uploading these videos. I can break them down and put them on thumb drives and, but have somebody else who's willing to put in a day's work, an 8-hour shift for the mission of what we're trying to do to reach people for Jesus Christ. But I need provision for the vision. We've got to get to the next level to do that. But I have started behind the scenes. I've started the other channels. I've created them. I've started breaking these down in smaller digestible segments for people, and I'm going to launch that. But I got a lot of irons in the fire right now. So for right now, the only place you can find some of these broken down in smaller portions would be over on Odyssey. Links will be below in the description box. So in the Age of Deceit Part 7, that secret base in California, that I nicknamed the Star Factory, it was literally a military base where all of the bands were created from the psychedelic era. Most of them didn't even know how to play instruments. Like Jim Morrison, he couldn't even play an instrument or anything. They created characters, and they even had set designers and costume designers that created these hippie fashions, just like we have fashion designers now, and they marketed that to the public. They didn't even have clubs that would let these people come in and play. So true story. They went in and built the infrastructure. They built a series of clubs out there in California, and then they hired dancers to come in and wear these costumes that the costume designers created, which now we call the hippie fashion. And they would send in the bands that they created to play at the clubs and a fake crowd of these dancers in these costumes in to dance until people started coming in like it was like a freak show. They had never coming out of the 40s and 50s music. This was a whole different drug culture, and they created it. The CIA created it. And if you don't believe that, please, it's all documented. Please go back and watch this video. And the whole series, the Age of Deceit series, the trans agenda, plays into, what the kids are going through today, the next iteration. And if you're looking for the presentation on Timothy Leary and all of his military connections and how they seeded Silicon Valley, they went to all the tech giants, Steve Jobs, Apple, how all of that's connected and with names and dates and all of it. If you go over to my website and you scroll down toward the bottom, it says Next Level. I'm pretty sure we discussed all that in these top 2 videos. The 100 Missing Stars, Artificial Dimensions, Machine Elves and Ghosts, and the LinkedIn AI Virtual Reality and DMT Dimension. I think it's in those top 2 videos. Okay, so I say all of that just to drive home the point that it's not just this batch of CIA documents that confirms that they have been using the school system our entire lifetime for MK Ultra. And they certainly didn't just use schools in Canada, and they didn't just use indigenous residential schools, and they didn't just use elementary schools. These MK Ultra contracted schools have been found from preschools to elementary schools to high schools, even into the colleges and universities, right up to this day, where they made it mandatory, even though these injections are completely useless against, quote, COVID, they made it mandatory that every college student had to be injected by Big Pharma just to get back on their campus, just to get back in their dorms, just to be able to go to school. So this MK Ultra program spans preschool to university and beyond. It's basically exactly what the conspiracy theorists, air quotes implied, have been saying for years, for decades. Trauma. Everybody knows about trauma-based mind control being part of MK Ultra, and then the mass traumatization program, the living in constant fear and the traumatizing the children from when they're very small by sexually exploiting them and exposing them to all sorts of very painful things, to where the majority of the population is on antidepressants and have anxiety and everything else at this point. So we know trauma-based mind control, check. Drugs, the big pharma drug cartel, we know that. The children are required to take over 100 injections from the drug cartel, Big Pharma, and Big Pharma is above the law. They're exempted from all of the carnage that happens, the fallout from the human experimentation, because they are contracted by the military. They're contracted by the intelligence agencies. You know, we've covered that in previous videos. Verifiable, again, documents. We already presented those. I'm not going to go back and rehash it. It's all still there for anyone who doesn't believe us. Just go back and watch the videos. It's all there. Not to mention, talk about biochemical warfare. Most of the pharmaceutical drugs that they are giving us come from communist China. That's like Batman giving the Joker the key to the Batcave and having him prepare all of his meals daily. Who thinks that makes any sense at all? That Americans take biochemical drugs from their archenemy, communist China. And a lot of people might say, oh, well, those are old trade contracts, though. We're revamping our supply lines since COVID-19 came out of China. You know, we're not going to take chances anymore. No, it's the exact opposite. Since 2020, U.S. imports of Chinese pharmaceuticals, defined by the U.S. Tariff Code to include packaged medications, vaccines, blood, organic cultures, bandages, and organs. We know that even our masks and our COVID tests that we were sticking up our nose voluntarily, almost all that stuff came from China. But anyway, since 2020, after they tell us that a contagion came out of China that locked down the entire world, all of Earth, right? So after that came out of China, since 2020, imports of Chinese pharmaceuticals to the United States has grown by 485%. Now that's on the what is legal side, but the drug cartel has the illegal side also. Then they have been in charge of distributing the illegal drugs. The CIA drug running that we've talked about with the poppy fields, you know, the wars in Afghanistan and the poppy fields and the heroin and now the fentanyl coming in over the southern border. Just like, what was it, guns and weapons with Fast and Furious, they get caught. It's actually the government, the Obama administration was giving the guns to MS-13 and to these gangs and stuff. And now we see with the faux Biden administration that, yeah, they've opened up the borders and the invasion has begun. So yes, live to the masses. We have the trauma, check, drugs, check, and then frequencies. Everyone has forever been warning about the 5G and the Li-Fi, the LED lights and the street lights and all of the directed energy weapons. And so we got the birds falling out of the air, you know, running through these frequency fields. And people are like, oh, no, it's not happening. CIA isn't doing this. The government wouldn't experiment on their own people. So anyway, frequencies, check. Okay, so I got up Sunday morning and I was going to finish up the edits on this video. I told everybody I would try to get it out this week again. And I didn't have to work Sunday, so I got up and put some coffee on and opened up my email. And there were my Rumble recommendations, and it had a new video from Edge of Wonder. And I really enjoy those guys over at Edge of Wonder, Ben and Rob. So I clicked on it and opened it up, and I saw that it was their Friday Night Live. So it was just Ben. Rob wasn't there, but he had Simon on. Because on Friday Night Live, they cover like the week's news, and then they pick one of the headlines of the week and they do a Friday night dive, like a mini deep dive on that topic. So I was listening to their conversation and it just checked all of the boxes, and I just really enjoyed their conversation, and I hope you guys do too. So I want to share that with you. So what I decided to do was I'm just going to play this clip of their conversation about some of the information in these CIA documents, and then I will interject. I'll throw my 2 cents in every once in a while and expand upon what they're saying. And by the time we get to the end of Simon's short presentation, that'll segue us right back into the next level, because the MK Ultra experiments on these children's brains and the stuff they wanted to learn about concussions and frequencies. That'll lead us right into the segment that I prefaced at the beginning of this series about dreams and alternate realities and all of these different experiences that we are calling dreams. So we'll go straight from the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. CIA documents right into the segment on dreams, alternate realities, and what the CIA was researching and how that applies to us and what they're suppressing, the human abilities that they are trying to hide from us. Then we will just jump off the high dive right into the deep end, and I will play those really fringe whistleblower testimonies that I wanted to put in the last video but didn't have time to. The main one being the adrenochrome trip report. You guys know we have covered the LSD and the DMT trip reports where people can tell you in their own words what they experienced. Well, the next drug in the CIA portfolio is the adrenochrome. So one of the testimonies is an adrenochrome trip report, and the hallucinations/dreams associated with that drug could be interpreted as something along the lines of time travel, which will just continue the conversation about these CIA secret projects, the sub-projects within the overarching Montauk project, which would be Project Pegasus and Project Looking Glass. So I hope to get it all in this video this time and at least wrap up this one line of thought. And keep it under 5 hours, hopefully under 4. We'll see.
All right. Moving on, though, we have all this MK Ultra stuff.
Oh man,
Simon, yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of stuff here. I know.
We'll see what we have time to do. We don't have to do it all, but I figured I'd put it there and we'll see.
No, dude, it's good. It's good. You know, I'm shocked by every time we do a show and we talk about MK Ultra. There's always people out there that ask, what exactly is MK Ultra?
Right. That's crazy to me. How could you not know at this point? Please.
I'm like, oh,
please keep up.
Yeah, please keep up.
This is so important.
Hey, you in the back. Yeah, you need to keep up.
Inappropriate. Your lack of awareness is inappropriate at this point in history.
Well, I mean, how would you describe MK Ultra in like a nutshell? Like, what would you say?
I mean, this is a level of behavior modification that gets into absolute control of human beings in their bodies, in their thoughts, and the ability to have them not remember the things that they played out. So to control their memories as well. So it is like utter control of human beings on pretty much every level, and all the science that they needed to do just that.
Yeah. And I think and MK is German for mind control. Yeah. Instead of calling it MC Ultra, they just call it MK because they continued on what the Germans were doing in Germany around World War II, and even prior to that, the Russians were also doing experiments. Even after World War I, they were doing experiments, and then the Germans kind of took over, and then doing all these like experimenting with drugs and
yeah, it was really merging drugs and trauma. Like that was
that was really discovered. Like, yeah, it's kind of like, can you control people through trauma and drugs? Yeah. And then this is 100% official. The CIA, because they actually declassified their own documents stating that they were testing. They were just like, even within the CIA itself, they were just like giving each other doses of like LSD just to see what would happen. Yeah. And then kind of like recording it and whatnot. So it's like you could be working at your cubicle and all of a sudden your partner just like doses you with LSD. And then it's like, you know, just to see how you would respond to that. But
yeah, because one of the requirements, I think this is in some of the stuff I have, but one of the requirements was that the person doesn't know they've been dosed. One of the requirements was that the person doesn't know they've been dosed.
Let me jump in here for just 1 second because I don't want to glaze over that. That is of the utmost importance because we all know that right now in this era of history, one of the largest complaints about them trying to force these experimental injections on every single living human during the launch of COVID-19 is that there was no informed consent. People just keep saying, well, you didn't tell us about the side effects. You didn't tell us what was really in it. You didn't tell us. And it's like, duh. Every single time that the CIA has experimented on humans against their will has been just like this, like Operation Midnight Climax, when they paid the prostitutes to lure in the guys and then drug them. One of the key aspects in that experiment was that the citizens that were being given the drugs could not know. The Johns it wasn't that they were going to lure them into a hotel room and say, hey, try this. This will be fun. No, they were not to know. And nearly every MK Ultra experiment was like that. So just like we've discussed in these last 3 videos, that people have been taking these injections since like the 1930s, or really earlier than that. It wasn't a coincidence that World War I started in 1917 and 1918 was the flu pandemic that pushed out the first set of bioweapons. It was an act of war even back then. You try to explain to people that they were born in to this transhumanist movement, this technocracy, and they'll say the government would never lie to us and tell us these were vaccines if they were doing some sort of other experimentation on us. And it's like, what? That's exactly what they would do. That's within the parameters of the experiment, in fact. For augmented reality to be tested, you can't be aware that they are shifting you into a false reality. That would ruin everything. So just like people now who take the psychedelic drugs, they know they're on a trip. They wanted to do the MK Ultra experiments on people who did not know that they were going into an augmented reality, an altered state of consciousness, and get all the data from that. And it's the same with these injections.
We've now essentially clinically tested the vaccine on billions of people worldwide.
And people never would have stood for all of the collateral damage, all of the carnage from these transhumanist experiments. The way they have it set up now, they can actually capitalize on the collateral damage. All of these diseases and illnesses and brain damage that they've created in us from all of the transhumanist experiments, they've actually been making money off of it because people think they have to go then back to Big Pharma and be treated for the rest of their lives, buying more and more and more of their drugs and chemicals. But I mean, it's to the point now that they don't want to feed the useless eaters, as they call us. So they've been cleaning up the mess now with this assisted suicide and euthanasia. It's out in the open. Canada's doing it. Let me see who's doing it. Okay, other countries, including Belgium, Canada, Colombia, and the Netherlands. And those are the ones that are just out in the open about it. We know how they weaponized the hospitals and used lethal injection drugs like remdesivir, milazodam, stuff like that. So everybody's aware, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are awake now. So we know that they have been killing people who can't assimilate with the technology, with this transhumanist technology, the ones who are having really bad reactions. But the one that's kind of getting an outcry right now is in the Netherlands. The Dutch assisted suicide programs have been killing autistic people and intellectually handicapped people, which is exactly what the Nazis did, right? Everyone wants to talk about the Holocaust like it was all about Jews, but it wasn't. One of the first groups of people that they rounded up and killed were the intellectually handicapped. And that's exactly what is still going on in the Netherlands with this assisted suicide. And that's basically just a cleanup program of the collateral damage from these experiments. The lifelong vaccine, air quotes implied, schedule has created a massive amount of augmented reality issues, which are called autism, which again is exactly why the MKUltra documents, the CIA documents say one of the protocols is the people being experimented on cannot know that they are, is because otherwise people would stand up and rebel if they knew that autism was a form of augmented reality, if they knew that schizophrenia was a form of augmented reality, if they knew that all of these were side effects of this program. One, a lot of them can be treated or at least improved, those conditions improved if we knew what we were treating. And that's what the homeopathic and the alternative doctors are doing. And that's why we have seen the full force of the machine. Everything from the media propaganda, Project Mockingbird, to the licensing agencies, the government agencies trying to pull the licenses of all these doctors, down to assassination. We have many martyrs, many martyrs. R.I.P. Dr. Rashid Buttar, he was fighting the autism from the vaccines, saying that this was coming from the vaccines years, over a decade before COVID-19. But he didn't survive World War III, just like so many others who have already fallen in this battle, like Russ Dizdar, Rob Skiba, who was one of the ones who brought forth this mind virus, literal mind virus, talking about the parasites and all of that we've discussed. Dr. Zelenko, this is war. People don't want to admit it, but this is no small thing. I'll talk a little bit more toward the end of this video about what I've been going through. This is not a joke to me. I don't do this for fun or shits and grins. This is very serious because it's serious to them. This is war, and they are assassinating people who have vital information on this because they don't want it stopped. So when I put up videos like of Foo Fighters in my backyard, that UFO orb thing, the same Foo Fighters that they saw in World War II, when I see this stuff, these monitoring spirits and all of this, it's not a joke. People are dying in this war. And I've lost an inordinate number of family members this last year since they've rolled this thing out, actually. Not like, seventh cousin removed. No, like immediate family members. My cousins and aunts and uncles. My cousin Bobby and my cousin Steve both died in the hospital on those machines from COVID, right? And then both of my parents got COVID just recently, like a couple of months, about 2 months ago, and it went on for many weeks. So for people who say, this isn't real, it's just the flu, we understand that they used the flu to beef up the numbers, to get the lockdowns, to push the injections. We get that. But there is a bioweapon out there. My dad, you guys know I've made multiple videos on the psychosis over the years as one of the augmented reality symptoms. My dad had the psychosis. My mom didn't. They were both very, very sick. Almost died, but they didn't go to the hospital. They didn't make the mistake that Steve and Bobby made by going to the hospital. And they stayed home and we treated them with the alternative treatments and they pulled through. But they didn't take the injections. It wasn't the injections. This thing is loose in the earth. It is shedding. It is a bioweapon. About a week or two into it, my dad had this psychosis. It was like somebody slipped LSD in his coffee. And he has always been a big, burly guy, tough guy, hunter, not scared of anything, was drafted by our government during the Vietnam War, was forced to leave his wife and newborn son because he got the letter in the mail. This man was like a scared animal. The room was like closed off where there were no doors or exits out of it. He was having an augmented reality experience. It was like a bad LSD trip. And it lasted about 2 days. And it was tough getting him through it. Mom walked him through it, had to try to keep him, bringing him back to reality. So they did recover, but we just buried Aunt Brenda. And right before that, we buried Aunt Gloria. And right before that, we buried Aunt Darlene, which was Bobby's mom and Dad's sister. And right before that, we buried Uncle Melvin. So I've lost an inordinate amount of family members. And when I was cooking meals and bringing them over there to mom and dad, they were telling me about these strange experiences, like a helicopter had flown over their house, like really low, like it was going to land in their backyard. And these planes were coming over really low. And they were like, it was so strange. And then they get sick. And I know they were telling the truth because I've seen the same things. In fact, I spent the morning going back years on my cell phone and pulling the videos and pictures out of the planes and helicopters over my home. And I want to lay out the timeline and show you guys the dates. I took screenshots straight from my phone so you can see, you know, how it does the dates on top of all the picture and the location that it was taken. So you guys can see I'm not making this up, that right after they came over my house is when I got sick. When I showed you guys that video that I broke out in sores all over my body and my eyes swelled shut and all of that. So I'll show you some of the pictures of the planes and helicopters. Clips, you can see I took multiple clips. This plane was just dive bombing my house over and over and over and over. I mean, I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 or 6 times, and I was getting so mad. Then I called the police. I called the airport. Nobody would help me. This thing just terrorized me. And I live back in the woods. My backyard nestles up to 100 acres of undeveloped woods. There's no houses or anything back there. And it wasn't looking at the woods. You'll see in the video, when it got to the woods line, in fact, it would circle back and go back around to the front of my house and come back, dive bomb my house. And then, but when it got to the woods line, it would circle back. It was just doing that. I mean, for like hours. It even left once, probably had to refuel, and came back and did it again. I just wanted to give you guys a visual idea of why I believe it when people say things like, hey, before this happened, there were planes and helicopters like flying really low over our house. I thought they were going to land in my backyard. When people say that stuff, I believe them because it has happened to me. Now, I may have to mute the audio in a couple of places on these because there were some expletives. At this point, I was very frustrated. This had gone on for, like I said, this was an hours-long thing, and I couldn't get any help from the police or the airport or anything, even though I was like, I'm not making this up. I have video. So I was pretty frustrated at this point and actually a little bit scared. My son was in the house, and I mean, it looked kamikaze. I'm like, is this a crazy person? Are they going to fly that plane into my house? You know? This is infuriating and dangerous. Look at this plane come right over my roof. Right over my roof. Look at this. There are and they're flying right over my house. Look at this. He's doing like tricks and stuff right over my house. He's like flipping around and spinning and right over my house. So that was spring of 2021, right in the middle of the big COVID thing. And then in the summer of 2021, July 11th of 2021, the helicopters came. And this wasn't the first time that I've dealt with the helicopters. This was a smaller one, though. But back in like 2016, when my best friend Deb was living out here, and she wasn't home at the time, but she saw the military helicopter down the highway here. So she knew exactly what I was talking about, but I was home alone. This military helicopter came right over my house like that plane and dipped down like it was going to land in my backyard. And I mean, so low that it was blowing stuff around in my yard and then lifted off and took off. So I don't know what that was all about. Now, this one was pretty low, but not like down, like on my roof or landing in my backyard. But I thought this was interesting because it looks like there's some sort of sprayer on the bottom of it. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's a crop sprayer or whatever, but I don't have any crops. I don't have any fields. I'm a house. Why would it be spraying over my house? Then this is when it started getting really scary. When I started getting really sick, I started having these bouts of terrible, you know, COVID or whatever. So right after I uploaded that synthetic biology and nanobioelectronics video, then some of you probably remember that I posted this little 5-minute video about the possible break-in when my phone lines were cut and that snake was left in my house and my alarm system was disabled. I showed that because I have my entire house rigged with ADT, like even the windows. If a window is opened, an alarm goes off. And the windows, one of the window sensors was removed. And you can see the date down here in the lower left-hand corner that was October 4th, 2021 when I uploaded that. And the timestamp record of that, again, is only over on Odyssey because I was still on YouTube at the time that happened. In fact, it was right after this that they terminated my channel. So I didn't upload small videos like this on Rumble or BitChute when I started moving archives over. But here you can see by the date on my cell phone pictures that I was still suffering very sick for weeks and weeks and weeks after that date. I mean, I was covered in sores, covered in rashes, my entire body, from my neck to my feet. Again, same date, weeks later, and I was still, both my eyes swelled shut, I couldn't see. And as far as this thing shedding, after I was caring for mom and dad through their COVID experience, then weeks later, I had another similar thing where I went deaf. I know people are always like, you haven't posted anything since February. Are you okay? Thank you for your thoughts and prayers because no, I have not been okay. The warfare is intense. I've been fighting these illnesses. I've been drug into court over my websites and everything. Yeah, I've been through a lot. But anyway, just last month in June, I posted on Twitter, I'm like, yay, like I'm past it. Mom and dad are healed up. The court case is over. I'm going to do the edit on this video and get it up. And I went deaf. I had some sort of antibiotic resistant thing in my ears. You know how people after they took the injection said it felt like ants were crawling all over them? Well, that was the sensation I had in my ears. And so it started like all the way down in my jawline and went up into my ears, both ears. And then after about 3 weeks or so of antibiotics, it just got worse to where my entire ears sealed off. Like up to the external part. Like they were so swollen up that my earlobes and, the top part, the gristle part of my ear, the cartilage part, all of it was just swollen, puffy like a marshmallow. It was completely swollen shut. And I had to go to the hospital and get steroid injections and high-powered antibiotic cocktails and stuff. And it did. So then it did start to open up because they're like, we can't even put that little ear thing, with the light in to see what's in there, what's going on, because it's completely sealed shut. And they did try. They were like pulling on my earlobe and I'm crying and they're trying to, and she's like, short of surgery, there's nothing, we don't know what's causing it. So they gave me the injections and stuff and it did go down. Then I got my hearing back in my left ear, but then I was still deaf in my right ear. So I tried to start the edit, but I couldn't hear. I didn't know the volume was Still, this may be pretty loud because to me, I'm still dealing with this. So I don't know if the audio to this video is like screaming loud or if it sounds like I'm in a tin can because everything sounds to me like this. So I don't know if it sounds like that to you or if it's just me. But I am better now, obviously, or I wouldn't be doing this edit. I can hear pretty good. It just kind of comes and goes with stabbing pains and stuff, but I do have my hearing back. And maybe in a later video, because this one's getting way too long, I'll tell you about what I ended up taking, because obviously antibiotics do not work on nanobots. In fact, I will tell you right now, the real turning point was EDTA, that I took EDTA just straight, like by the spoonful, by the teaspoonful. And the first time I took it, I like gagged and almost threw up. It's really gross. But within 30 minutes, my ears was like almost pop and the crawling would stop and it was amazing. So EDTA. You can see right here in June 2023, it cost about $61. I got it for $61. In fact, right here is the exact brand I used, and I got it from Natural Health Concept. And of course, the disclaimer, this is not medical advice. I'm just sharing with you my experience and what I did. And hey, I want to thank everybody who sent financial support all of this time while I haven't even been online, because I would have never been able to pay like $60, $70, $100 as I was fighting this thing, trying to get my hearing back. A lot of people just go by what the hospitals say, and they were doing antibiotics and stuff, and it was getting worse. It wasn't getting better. It got increasingly worse after several weeks of antibiotics. So, the fact that I was financially able to afford expensive supplements like this that aren't covered by insurance or anything like that, it was a real godsend. So thank you guys so much. You guys know, just like last video, how I showed the orb, a literal Foo Fighter in my backyard. It's not just planes and helicopters. Now we've graduated, I guess, to Foo Fighters, to, other inhuman entities. But that is the definition of spiritual warfare. Over the years, I've kept you guys abreast of my situation with spiritual warfare. I've had poltergeist activity. I've had shadow people, Hat Man, cryptid encounters in my woods. I even got bluff charged one night. Not even kidding. So that's the truth. It's not excuses. It's a constant battle. This is spiritual warfare. And I'm sure the vast majority of you are going through it too. I know you are, because I get your messages. Incredible financial struggles, incredible health struggles, just everything coming at us right now. Because when you step out to do anything for the Lord, to help wake up souls out of this trance and lead them to Jesus Christ, these things are going to come after you because they want you to shut up. They want you to stop. And the weapons of our warfare are spiritual, not carnal. So we got to be at the top of our game. This is the end time battle. This thing is going to culminate in the war of all wars, the battle of Armageddon. I mean, we're not there yet, but if you have chosen sides and you are going to fight in the army of the Most High Holy God, then you can expect to move into more and more intense spiritual warfare as that great and terrible day approaches. But I just want everyone to know that I'm fine. I don't live in fear at all. I mean, maybe that was one of the blessings of the out-of-body experience I had when I was a teenager, is that I don't fear death at all. I know for a fact that there is an afterlife. It's not like a religion to me. I know Him. I know my God. I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. So I don't live in fear. I do get battle weary. I go through all, the spirit's willing and the flesh is weak stuff. But I don't live in fear. I really do live in that peace that surpasses understanding. And I'm going to fight till the very last minute. If God decides to take me out, then I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. I'm going to finish this safe haven for the refugees. I'm going to keep broadcasting the revelations that the Lord gives me and try to reach every soul that I possibly can. So even though I may have to endure till the end, I'm going to complete my mission. And God's not going to let anybody touch me until I do. It's just like Jesus said in John 19:11, when Pilate was getting ready to crucify him, to turn him over to the synagogue of Satan so they could kill him. And Pilate says, aren't you even going to say anything to try and defend yourself? And Jesus said, you could have no power at all against me unless it had been given to you from above. So you think you're going to get one over on me, but I'm about to get one over on you. I'm going to complete my mission. God said He's the author and the finisher of our faith. So until I'm done, He's not going to let these guys take me out. And when I am done, I'll be so glad to graduate. I want to graduate, get my diploma, and hear, well done, good and faithful servant, and get out of this hellscape. So anyway, it's up to you if you think it's a coincidence that this happened in October. Like, here's the video I put up October 4th with all of this, the phone lines and internet lines cut, a snake released in my house, my alarm system disabled. Then by 2 weeks later, here's October 19th, I was disabled, covered in rashes and sores and my eyes swelled shut. So that's October 19th. And on October 17th, 2021, Russ Dizdar dies of COVID. Russ Dizdar has passed away sadly on Monday, October 17th, 2021 due to complications from COVID-19. Yeah, right. While at the exact same time, on October 15th, 2021, Rob Skiba, an influential figure in flat earth and Christian circles, has died of COVID-19. While at the exact same time, Steve Quayle was on oxygen and almost died of COVID-19. Remember, I put that video up on October 20th, 2021 of all the martyrs, all the people that they were taking out, that they were picking off. And there were tons of others, like leaders of rallies, people who organized rallies and protest groups and stuff like that. And the MK Ultra Mockingbird media were gloating about it and they were so happy they were using it as propaganda to get people to take more bioweapon injections. They were saying, look at all of these anti-vaxxers who just got assassinated. I mean, they all just died of COVID because they wouldn't take the injections.